we had good conversation with President Trump, and I think he understands for today that we can't just swap territories. It's not fair. It's not real.
So you think his position has changed?
Yes, I think so. And I think that it's not about territories. It's about the position of Putin. He will continue. If we will give them more that he really wants, he will continue. So the question how to stop the war is just to stop Putin's ambitions, to change his position to this war.
President Zelensky of Ukraine reportedly expected to meet at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump on Sunday. The U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker, raised an interesting question this week. Let's play it.
I think we are trying to find out what the maximum that Russia is willing to do. I mean, they keep, sending these massive attacks overnight against Ukraine. I mean, that speaks for itself to some extent. But, President Trump is the only one, as the peacemaker in chief, that can bring both sides to the table and see if he can make a deal.
Let's bring in our panel. Byron York, Fox News contributor, former chief of staff and advisor to the Biden White House press office, Yemisi Egbewale, and Republican strategist Colin Reed. Welcome all. So, interesting times with Zelensky coming to town. What are your expectations, Byron?
Not really very high. I mean, we've had Trump meetings with one party or the other party in this Russia-Ukraine war, and we still have not seen any talks between the two parties who are at war right now. So at times Zelensky has made really tough statements like we're never going to give up an inch of territory, and at other times he sounded, as he has recently, more conciliatory. Maybe we could form a demilitarized zone somewhere in the eastern, in the Donbass, and maybe we could settle this or that. But still not knowing where Russia is, we can't really expect a lot of progress right now.
Yemisi, is that the wild card in all this, what Vladimir Putin's willing to do?
Yeah, at times this whole entire situation between Russia and Ukraine when it comes to the United States engaging in peace talks has felt a bit like Groundhog Day. We repeat the same cycles. Zelensky is willing to come to the table and have conversations with American leadership. Putin promises conversations and he promises something a little bit conciliatory, and then we're left in the same bucket. At this point, it seems that Putin is driving a lot of the conversation. It's the asks for him to come to the table. It's the ask for him to respect at least some of Ukraine's sovereignty here. Zelensky shows up time and time again, and the outstanding outlier here continues to be Vladimir Putin, and it'll be up to President Trump to see if he can bring him to the table for real this time.
President Zelensky saying they're about 90% of the way there, but it feels like they've been kind of stuck there for a while. What's your take, Colin?
Well, the devil is always in the details, especially on these last few parts that need to be worked out. But by any demonstrable metric, I think it's fair to say that 2025 ends a lot closer to peace than when it began. And that speaks to what I think the change in administration, one, and also the ability that now you've got the United States government, the Ukrainian government, the European government, all saying this war needs to end. And now the one wild card, of course, remains Russia and what they're going to do. A year ago at this time, the Biden administration had spent two and a half years just talking about we'll do whatever it takes, which didn't really make any sense, with no plan to wind down the war, and at the same time showing support for Ukraine verbally, but not giving them the tools and resources they really needed to wind down the war. So look, there's a long way to go, but we're closer. We end the year in a better spot than where it started in this process.
All right, to Nigeria, where we saw U.S. airstrikes ordered by the commander-in-chief. President Trump had an interesting quote to Politico saying, quote, "They were going to do it earlier," Trump said, and I said, nope, let's give a Christmas present. They didn't think that was coming, but we hit them hard. Every camp got decimated. Byron, what about those strikes on Nigeria on people who have been slaughtering Christians on Christmas Day?
Well, there's no doubt that what's been happening in Nigeria is terrible. I mean, I guess the question is, why is the United States getting militarily involved in it? Trump has talked about this for quite a while, and it is an issue with some American evangelicals. If you look at estimates of the number of Christians who have been killed for their faith around the world, last year there were about 4,500, and more than 3,000 of those were in Nigeria. But still, I think Trump has not made the case for why the United States needs to intervene militarily in this.
Yemisi, how do you assess it?
Well, I assess it as someone whose family is from the southern region of Nigeria. And I know in the Sokoto region, the northeast next to Niger, there are a lot of Christians, but there are also a lot of Muslim communities that have been terrorized by this Islamic organization, Boko Haram. It is wonderful that the president has worked with the Nigerian government. We know that he spoke to the foreign secretary. We know that he's spoken to Tinubu. I think the ask here is, what is the ultimate goal? This is a conflict that has warred well before I was born. And so it would be nice to see if the president has a direction before America engages once again in another foreign conflict without a clear out.
Colin, what's your assessment?
Well, it should concern us all that ISIS has ascended anywhere, and if that's happening in Africa, that I think it also sends a very powerful message that the president, unlike, say, President Obama, who launched a Twitter war campaign in response to when Boko Haram was first getting rolling about a dozen years ago or so, President Trump's made it really clear: mess with the bull, get the horns. It doesn't mean we're gonna start new wars, we're gonna invade countries, but it does mean that if our interests are threatened, that the United States will strike back when it's in our interest, and that's what we saw last night.
We asked the panelists what President Trump has done this year that has really shaken up Washington most. Byron, start us off.
Well, I think it is destroying the east wing of the White House. Pretty audacious move. It's known as changing the facts on the ground. Very surprising thing.
Yemisi, what about you?
I mean, DOJ, a situation that has impacted greatly the Maryland, D.C., and Virginia area. We know so many people have been personally affected, and we'll never forget the era of Elon Musk and DOJ.
And the question is, what was their impact long-term, Yemisi?
Well, the impact was a lot of federal workers lost their jobs because they were told that they were the fat that needed to be culled. And what we've learned is that you cannot operate a lot of these departments and agencies like you would Tesla.
All right, Colin, what about you?
President Trump made a gutsy call back in June to knock out Iran's nuclear sites and send a message that two things were happening. One, the president was not going to sit idly by. We were going to shape rather than react to world events. And number two, he's a man of his word when it comes to Iran not getting a nuclear weapon.
Okay, of course, it's a Friday, and we love to do winners and losers. And so let's get to that with our esteemed panelists. Byron, winner and loser this week.
Well, my winner is that person in Arkansas who is holding a $1.8 billion winning Powerball ticket, second biggest in history. I mean, how could that not be the winner? My loser is a member of Congress, Representative Sheila Sherfilis McCormick. She's accused of stealing $5 million in federal funds and using the money for, among other things, to buy a $109,000 ring. Now, she has a portrait on the house, an official portrait in the house, and she has removed a ring from her finger in that picture. That's the loser move of the week.
All right, Yemisi, what about you? What's your assessment?
My winner is TSA. I've done a lot of holiday travel. I never thought I would say this, but I think TSA is doing a wonderful job with the surge of international travelers and domestic travelers. I travel internationally, and I have to say TSA is doing their job. If you're traveling, please say thank you to them. They're doing the best that they can. And my loser is Nicki Minaj, and I know you all are avid fans and you're following her closely, but she did a sit down with Erica Kirk. I thought it was stilted, a bit awkward, and this seems like a very clunky rollout into her new future as a face of the MAGA movement.
I think we should take a moment to have Yemisi, to shout out Yemisi shouting out the TSA. How about that? That's really impressive. All right, Colin, what do you got for winner and loser?
Winner, it's not quite a Powerball ticket, as Byron referenced, but gas prices at a 4-year low. So the winner was everyone hitting the roads this weekend, traveling to see family. Nice to have a little relief at the pump. That didn't happen by accident. That's a commitment by this administration to energy dominance, and it's long overdue. Loser, the good people and businesses of New York City, who in less than a week are going to be living under a socialist regime after Bernie Sanders swears in Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani. Yikes. Socialism doesn't work. They're going to learn the hard way. Once you've run out of money to spend on these things, those tax dollars are going to keep flowing. So good luck, people of New York, but you can do it. You're resilient.
I'd like to shout out a winner, former Senator Ben Sasse, who's showing great courage and faith in the face of adversity. God bless him and his family. Yeah. Panelists, well done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.